Forever chemicals destroyed by a simple new method. This is by Northwestern University. pfas, a group of manufactured chemicals commonly used since the 1940s, are called forever chemicals for a reason. Bacteria cannot eat them, fire cannot incinerate them, and water cannot dilute them. And if these toxic chemicals are buried, they leach into surrounding soil, becoming a persistent problem for generations to come. Now, Northwestern University chemists have done the seemingly impossible. Using low temperatures and inexpensive, common reagents, the research team developed a process that causes two major classes of PFAS compounds to fall apart, leaving behind only benign end products. The simple technique potentially could be a powerful solution for finally disposing of these harmful chemicals, which are linked to many dangerous health effects in humans, livestock, and the environment. PFAS has become a major societal problem, said Northwestern's William Ditchell, who led the study. He said even just a tiny amount of PFAS causes negative health effects, and it does not break down. We cannot just wait out this problem. We wanted to use chemistry to address this problem and created a solution that the world can use. It's exciting because of how simple yet unrecognized our solution is, he said. Ditchell is a Robert L. Letzinger Professor of Chemistry at Northwestern's Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. Brittany Trang, who conducted the project as part of her recently completed doctoral thesis in Ditchell's laboratory, is the paper's co-first author. The same category as lead, short for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, has been in use for 70 years as non-stick and waterproofing agents. They are commonly found in non-stick cookware, waterproof cosmetics, firefighting foams, water-repellent fabrics, and products that resist grease and oil. Over the past years, however, PFAS has made its way out of consumer goods and into our drinking water, and even into the blood of 97% of the U.S. population. Although the health effects are not yet fully understood, PFAS exposure is strongly associated with decreased fertility, developmental effects in children, increased risks of various types of cancer, reduced immunity to fight infections, and increased cholesterol levels. With these adverse health effects in mind, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, recently declared several PFAS as unsafe even at trace levels. Ditchell said recently the EPA revised its recommendations for PFOA essentially down to zero. That puts several PFAS into the same category as lead. Unbreakable bonds. Although community efforts to filter PFAS from water have been successful, there are few solutions for how to dispose of PFAS once it was removed. The few options that are now emerging generally involving PFAS destruction at high temperatures and pressures or other methods that require large energy inputs. In New York State, a plant claiming to incinerate PFAS was found to be releasing some of these compounds into the air. Ditchell said the compounds were emitted from the smokestacks and into the local community. Another failed strategy has been to bury the compounds in landfills. When you do that, you're basically just guaranteeing that you will have a problem 30 years from now because it's going to slowly leach out. You don't solve the problem, you just kick the can down the road. The secret to PFAS indestructibility lies in its chemical bonds. PFAS contains many carbon-fluorine bonds, which are the strongest bonds in organic chemistry. As the most electronegative element in the periodic table, fluorine wants electrons, and badly. Carbon, on the other hand, is more willing to give up its electrons. When you have that kind of difference between two atoms, and they are roughly the same size, which carbon and fluorine are, that's a recipe for a really strong bond, Ditchell explains. Pinpointing PFAS Achilles heel. But while studying the compounds, Diggel's team found a weakness. PFAS contains a long tail of unyielding carbon-fluorine bonds, but at one end of the molecule there is a charged group that often contains charged oxygen atoms. Diggel's team targeted this head group by heating the PFAS in dimethyl sulfoxide, an unusual solvent for PFAS destruction, with sodium hydroxide, a common reagent. The process decapitated the head group, leaving behind a reactive tail. That triggered all these reactions, and it started spitting out fluorine atoms from these compounds to form fluoride, which is the safest form of fluorine, Digital said. Although carbon-fluorine bonds are super strong, that changed the charge. The head group is the Achilles heel. In previous attempts to destroy PFAS, other researchers have used high temperatures up to 400 degrees Celsius. Ditchell is excited that the new technique relies on milder conditions and a simple, inexpensive reagent, making the solution potentially more practical for widespread use. After discovering the PFAS degradation conditions, Ditchell and Trang also discovered that the fluorinated pollutants fell apart by different processes than generally assumed. Using powerful computational methods, collaborators Ken Hoke at UCLA and Yuli Li, a student at Tianjin University, who virtually visited Hook's group, simulated the PFAS degradation. Their calculations suggested that PFAS falls apart by more complex processes than expected, although it was previously assumed that PFAS should fall apart one carbon at a time. The simulation showed that PFAS actually falls apart 2 or 3 carbons at a time, a discovery that matched Ditchell's and Trang's experiments. By understanding these pathways, researchers can confirm that only benign products remain. This new knowledge also could help guide further improvements to the method. This proved to be a very complex set of calculations that challenged the most modern quantum mechanical methods and fastest computers available to us, said Hook, a distinguished research professor in organic chemistry. He said, quantum mechanics is a mathematical method that simulates all of chemistry, but only in the last decade have we been able to take a large mechanistic problem like this, evaluating all the possibilities and determining which one can happen at the observed rate. Yuli has mastered 3 computational methods and worked with Brittany long distance to solve this fundamental but practical significant problem. 10 down, 11,990 to go. Next, Ditchell's team will test the effectiveness of its new strategy on other types of PFAS. In the current study, they successfully degraded 10 perfluoroalkyl carboxyl acids, PFCAs, and perfluoroalkyl ether carboxylic acids, PFECAs, including perfluorooctanoic acid, PFOA, and one of its common replacements known as Gen X, 2 of the most prominent PFAS compounds. The US EPA, however, has identified more than 12,000 PFAS compounds. Although this might seem daunting, Ditchell remains hopeful, saying our work addresses one of the largest classes of PFAS, including many we are most concerned about. There are other classes that don't have the same Achilles heel, but each one will have its own weakness. If we can identify it, then we know how to activate it to destroy it. Ditchell is a member of the Institute for Sustainability and Energy at Northwestern's program on plastics, ecosystems, and public health, the Center for Water Research, and the International Institute for Nanotechnology. The study, Low Temperature Mineralization of Perfluorocarboxylic Acids, is published August 19 in the journal Science magazine, and this was from Northwestern University on phys.org. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.